All right, so while we're waiting for Christian then, just to review what we did in the first lesson, as I just showed you how to go to web and how to choose ASP.NET Application.NET Framework. We created a new project that we called MVC Movie. We didn't set anything else. All right. In the box that came up, we chose MVC, which automatically, when we did that, check this button right here for MVC. Then we went in and we changed the authentication from no authentication, all right, to single user, whatever the heck it was, the top one. Then we went in and we actually ran the project. When we ran it, now this is a very small version of it, but that's what you saw. You got application name on the top, and we're going to change that shortly. You got home, about, and contact. All right. And all of those pages actually had something in them. This is the home page that you see right here. Since we chose that first option under authentication, we also got the register and login here. And you saw that the thing itself was responsive. All right. That's what we did in the first lesson, first part, whatever you want to call it. Then we came in part 2 and added a controller. First thing that we did, and again, I'm not going to read to you, I promise. First thing that we did, though, was we looked at the author's description of what the M, the V, and the C stand for. All right. MVC is a very popular design pattern. So in other words, it's a very popular way that you can build programs. And you can use it not just for ASP.NET like we have right here, but virtually every language. All right, you can build just straight C# projects that are MVC. You can build PHP projects. You can build Java projects. You can build Python projects, etc., that are model view controller projects. All right. So we did that. We came in here. We right mouse clicked on our controller folder. We chose add. We chose controller. So we right mouse clicked on there, chose add, chose controller. When it came up, as you can see, it says this is called the Add Scaffold Dialog Box. What the author means there is, I don't know if you've ever heard the term scaffolding. Some of you might know it a heck of a lot better than I do. But sometimes if you're building a building or a house, whatever it happens to be, you kind of put a false front or whatever on it when you start. That's the scaffolding. The scaffolding here is the code that automatically gets added for you by ASP.NET. All right. So we came in here, we chose under controller, we chose MVC5 controller empty. We changed the name from default controller to Hello World controller. All right. We saw that we had under our controllers folder, we had a new file built for us called Hello Controller, or Hello World Controller, sorry, .cs. We also got a new folder created for us that was called Hello World. But since we chose empty controller, even though it created the folder for us, it put nothing in that folder. All right. Then we went in and we replaced the contents, the original contents of our folder with this. And what this says is, when we come in here, because this is the Hello World controller, when we come in and change that to put in the name of our port /Hello World, it automatically ran that method for us. When we came in and we put in the name of the port /Hello World /welcome, it automatically ran this for us. All right? So imagine, all right, if you would, that every time we're adding things, it's like we're adding a new place that you can go to. Maybe you've done that with your GPS. And what we're figuring out in here is the route to that new place. All right? So we ran the first one. We saw this is my default action. We ran the second one, and we saw it's up a ways, but we saw where it said this is the welcome action method. So you've seen both those. All right? Now, please look up on the screen here. You can all do this. You're not going to hurt anything. But in here, if you would, look on your folders on the right. I want you to single click on your app start folder, single click on your app start folder on the arrow that's here, and that should show you these. Then I want you to double click on the one that says routeconfig.cs, and it'll bring this up. Again, do I expect you to understand a lick of what that means? No. So I want to give you a high-level overview of what it means. All right? You can see if you look up on the screen, it says, what are we doing here? We're mapping a route. All right? What's the name of that route? Default. Which means if we don't give it something else in there like we did with Hello World, it's going to run this by default. And by default, it's going to use the home controller and the index method. So if we don't tell it to do anything else, it will automatically run the default home controller and the index method under that. What the heck does that mean? That means, again, by default, look up on the screen. It'll run the home controller's index method. That's what it's doing unless we tell it to do something else. All right? We did tell it to do something else. We put in there /hello world, and then it ran the index file for that. Then we put in /hello world /welcome, and it ran the welcome method. All right? If you didn't like my explanation, they explain it more on page 15 right here. They're saying it's all this code in the yellow, and this is what it's doing. I'm just trying to put it in terms where I think it's going to make the most sense to you. That's all. We already did this. I showed you the welcome method. Nothing big in there. Now, they want you to change this. If you would, please. They give you some code here near the top of page 16. All right? So I'm going to grab all of that code. It's 3 or 4 lines. Near the top of page 16, I'm going to highlight all of it, right mouse click on it, and choose copy. Then I'm going to go back to my code. And what I want to do is I want to go back to that home controller, the Hello World controller, and I don't want this code anymore. I want to run different code. Now, can I keep this code here? You all know we can. I've got it highlighted. I can comment it all out, right? Or you can just remove it. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to replace it with the code that was on page 16. So let's look at the difference between, I don't know what I did right there. Let's look at what's the difference. I'm going to put this on 2 lines just so you can see all of it. Between this routine which is the one we ran first, and this routine, which is what we're running now. Okay? First of all, look up on the screen. Would everybody agree? The one that's now highlighted in blue takes no parameters. Would you agree with that? There's just an empty set of parentheses. This second one takes 2 parameters. One that's called name, one that's called num times. All right? This first one just returns a string that says, this is the welcome action method. All right? This second one right here, this one, we'll come back to the HTTP utility in just a minute. We're going to run this one twice so you can see exactly what it does. We're going to run this one twice so you can see exactly what it does. All right? So I'm going to come back here, and as we did before, I'm going to come into here. I'm going to right mouse click under my Views Home folder. I'm going to right mouse click here on the index file and say View in Browser. You all know by now what this brings up. This brings up our project. All right? It'll come up in just a minute. Sometimes when it reloads like this, it takes a while. All right? I can't give you a good reason why it does, but it just does. Of course, the fact that I've got a lot of other things up and running probably doesn't help either. There. All right. So I'm going to change this back to Hello World. All right. And it says, this is my default action, which surprises me. All right, so let's go back and look in here. Maybe it's because I didn't save. I don't know. Oh, it's because the one we changed is the welcome one. Now, would you agree, looking on the screen here, this is expecting what? A string and an integer, right? It's expecting a string and an int. I'm not going to give it anything. So in other words, I'm going to run this thing again, and I'm going to put here, after hello world, /welcome. And it says hello, comma, num times is 1. It didn't blow up. I didn't give it a number, but it didn't blow up. And let's look at why it didn't blow up. You may or may not remember this from your book. Look on the screen and look at what's in blue. We talked a little bit about default values. That's a default value. So that says if you don't put anything in there, have it default to 1. And even though we didn't put in a name, it still worked because name, since we didn't put anything in, automatically got set to the empty string. All right, so I'm going to change this. I'm going to run this one more time. And where it says welcome, this is what I asked you about before. I'm going to put the question mark in there. So I'm going to say question mark, name equals Jeff, all right, ampersand, num times equals 356. I just made that up. And see how it changes? I passed 2 parameters in. I passed Jeff in for the name, so it now says hello Jeff. I passed 356 in for the number of times. So instead of num times is 1, it now says num times is 356. Right? They use Scott and they use 4. Now, I will tell you that if you never look at this handout that I gave you that we're going over now again, if you never do again, there will come a time next semester where we'll be going over something. I don't know what, but we'll be going over something and you're like, I don't have a clue as to what the hell he's even talking about. But it might be something like model binding. The URLs that are in here are really good. So if we go over something and what we go over makes no sense, it'll make more sense after you go and you look at that. All right. Oh, the other thing that I didn't talk about in here is this HTML encode. And even though you don't realize it, we did talk about that already. Okay? You may or may not remember this, but one thing I asked you about last semester was I asked a question one day. I said, is there anybody in here who has never been out on the internet before and has not filled out some kind of electronic form? To my knowledge, when I asked that, there wasn't anybody who had never done it before. All right? So you got a form out there. You've created forms, so you know what they look like. All right? So, for instance, if you go in here, Luke, I'll kind of put you on the spot right now. So if we go in here and we go down to the bottom, this is an example of a form. All right? If we come in here and we're able to put in, for example, script, all right, and some JavaScript in here like alert, hello, script. If I'm able to put that into a form, I'm afraid to run it because I'm hoping it doesn't say hello. But if I put that in and an alert comes up that says hello, that's about as bad as it gets for a form. Because what that means is I can come in there and I can put JavaScript in there. You might say, well, big deal. I can put all sorts of JavaScript in there, including mean and malicious JavaScript that goes in and maybe does something to this system. I could probably bring the website down. You don't want that to happen. It should make sense. So what this does, that command that I just showed you, this thing that says HTML encode, it goes and it converts this into this. You may or may not remember that, but those are called HTML entities. So we're encoding it because we're trying to keep it and make sure that people aren't able to go in and do things they aren't supposed to do. All right? And when I took yours and I wrote the PHP script to make it work, I didn't do any encoding. So then they ask us to go in, and again, they ask us to change this one that they just had us change to. I'm going to comment that out. And they ask us to come back in and do this. All right. Can you look up on the screen here, please? Do you notice the difference as this says ID where that said num times. Everybody understand that? All right. ID is a special word here. How do I know that? Well, I had you before open up this file that was called route config. And notice that it's got a special word in it that says ID. All right. And you, again, you might look at all that and go, fine, whatever. What is that buying me? All right. You see this? 1 question mark name equals Scott. What we want to get to eventually is we want to be able to type in hello world /1/Scott. That's called a pretty URL. We don't want question marks in it. We want it as simple as it can possibly be. That's what we'll work toward in here. Okay, look on the screen if you would, please. They tell you, and we can do this. We can go and add the code you see right here in blue to that route config file. And what that will say is, hey, if we start anything with the word hello, just hello, automatically run the controller, etc., and do all that stuff. And it really should have said hello world. All right? We don't have to change that. It'll be fine. All right? But I'm just trying to show you, you can go into this file that's called routeconfig.cs and put in your own routes. And again, I likened that. I said it's kind of like if you went in and just added a new entry into your GPS. It's the same type of an idea. So notice once they do that, it's what I showed you. See how it says /Scott/3? That's a pretty URL. All right. All right. On and onward and upward to part 3 here. Adding a view. I think you would all agree if you look right now, I've said this to you already a couple times, that we have a hello world controller, all right, right there. But notice that with our hello world controller, we have an index, and all that does is it just writes down this is the default action. We want it to do more than that. We want to write our own view. So if you look up on the screen, what we're going to do is change this, and in just a minute, underneath views, hello world, we're going to have a file there. All right, that's what we're going to do next. All right. So as it says, currently, this is what exists under the index, return view. Okay, well, what's view? Right now, it's not doing much of anything. Okay, we're going to change that. Okay, so we want it to do this. So look up on the screen, please. We want this, instead of saying that, we want this to say return view. Please look and watch while I type here, because notice, okay, I've got that, but what am I getting now? I'm getting an error. All right? Yeah, I know I'd get an error because view, which we're going to write in just a minute, is not a string. So once we change that to the word view, we've got to change this to the word action result. And now it works. So please go into your hello world controller, and in your get, your first one, which currently probably says public string index, and then this is the default action, change it so it looks like this. All right? We're not done yet. We have to actually write a view so it does something. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. I want to make sure that what I'm going to show you is the way they show you in the handout here. All right, so how do we get that? Okay, what you typically do is take your mouse, put it on the word index, and right mouse click on it. Take your mouse, put it on the word index, and right mouse click on it, and choose Add View. All right, that'll add a new view for you. This is not the way it's shown in the handout. The handout is 5 years old. They made it easier to use than the way it used to be. So I'm going to choose Add View. And the first thing it's going to say to me is, okay, what kind of view do you want to add? All right. Notice by default it's called Index. All right. So again, if you look on their handout, this is not the way we do it there. All right. And we're not doing it that way. But we are going to create a new view right now. So how are we going to do that? Well, with where we are right here, oops, let me get rid of this. All right, with where we are, we're going to keep this, the word index. We're going to keep the template as empty without model. All right, we're not going to create a partial view. So we're just going to keep everything exactly the way it is. But before you click Add, please notice, I think you'd all agree, there's nothing right here under the Hello World, under Views Hello World. There's nothing there. But after I click Add, now there is something there. That's what we just created. All right? A file called index.cs HTML. Not very much in that file. It's pretty ugly. Right? So they want us to change that code, and if you go to the bottom of page 22 on the handout, they want us to change that code to this code right here. All right. Might look ugly when you copy it in. You might have to hit Enter and move stuff around a little bit so it looks the way it does in the book. All right. If you look up on the screen, this is the first time you're seeing what's called razor code. Razor code is the stuff that's in between the stuff in the yellow. All right. What razor code does is it allows you to put in C# code right in an HTML file. Razor code allows you to put C# right into your HTML file. All right. Somebody tell me what is the name of this file? It's index.cs HTML. The CS for C#, the HTML for hypertext markup language. Anytime you've got a razor file like this that has C# inside of your HTML must always end with the extension .cs HTML. And that's what we have here. Now that we have this file inside of our Hello World folder that's inside of our Views folder, I can now right mouse click on that file and tell it to view it in the browser. Okay? Now, it doesn't look very grand and glorious. This is the first time I was able to run this right from Hello World. Previously, I had to run it from the home controller and then change this and manually type in Hello World. I don't have to now because I created under my Hello World controller, I created a view. A view is a CS HTML file that contains a combination of hypertext markup language and C# statements. This is what gets presented to your user. That's what a view is. So how did we change this? Well, before what that said was, this is the default action. Does it look a little nicer now? I think it does. All right, I can still go back to my home page, about, contact. Now if I want to jump back again, now I've again got to type in Hello World to get back here. All right. Now, you notice we didn't have this before? Under Hello World, we didn't have this menu bar up there. How did we get that menu bar? We got it from this line of code right here. That line of code says, I want my file, my view, I want it to be able to use this underscore layout.cs HTML file. Now, if you haven't liked this so far, you're probably going to like it even less now, but I'm going to go under shared and I'm going to open up underscore layout.cs HTML. What this is, again, notice there is Razor in this. Razor code always starts with the @ like this. So there's a bunch of Razor and there's a bunch of HTML and there's even Bootstrap in here. This is the layout file that is going to be shared by everybody, by all of the different views in our application. Why? So they can all use these indexes that say home, about, and contact. All right. There's a lot of other stuff in here. We're not going to go over it at all now. We're going to go over it next semester, such as what the heck is a bundle. All right. You're going to end up taking all of your CSS files and bundling them together, and then you'll minify them. So what's minify? You already know what minify is. We did minifying when we brought over our jQuery. I showed you jQuery minified and jQuery non-minified. So you're going to take your CSS files and minify those. You're going to take your JavaScript files and you're going to minify those. Is it hard? Oh, it's just a command you put in your file. That's it. So that's what we saw when we did it, right there. All right. Now they explain in here in much, much more depth and breadth of coverage than I'm explaining it to you. All right. All right, they want us to go in then and make some changes. It says, the views, home, about is rendered inside of that. Okay, change the contents of the title element. Okay, all right, we'll do this. All right, let's see. if everyone would please do this. That is, go over and under your shared folder, open up this layout.cs HTML file. Under your shared folder, open up _layout.cs HTML. So open that file up. And what does that have in it? I mean, it has a lot of stuff. All right. The first thing, if you look up here, it's got your title, and it has My ASP.NET Application. That's kind of a stupid title. Doesn't hurt. It's not hurting anything. But they want us to change that so that instead of saying that, we want it to say right here, Movie App. So I'm on line 6. Change this to Movie App. All right. This said My ASP.NET Web Application, and I'm changing it to Movie App. Then I'm going to save, and I'm going to run the program again. All right. And you say nothing changed. Yes, it did. It changed here. Can you see this? Where am I? It's very hard for you to see, but if you look on your tabs where it says Homepage, your tab now says Homepage - Movie App. So when we changed this right here, we changed the tab at the top of our screen. All right, that's it. Did we have to do that? Of course not. But we did it. All right. Can you do this, please? Go down to line 20. This line that's right here. In fact, I'm going to break this up. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to put it over a bunch of lines so you can see everything that's going on here. All right, find that line. You see this thing here that says application name? Everybody sees that? That right there that says application name, that's this. All right. I mean, and it's not terrible, but the name of our application is not application name. All right. So they want us to change this, and they want us to change it so that it looks like this. MVC movie index movies null, etc. So I'm going to grab all that stuff. This is in the handout I gave you, and it's on page 26, and it's about halfway down in the file. So I'm going to grab that. If you can't find it or whatever, let me put it in, and if you want, you can copy yours over. All right. So I'm going to remove the one that's there, not comment it out. I'm going to get rid of it. All right. And I'm going to put it again over a bunch of lines so you can see what's going on. Okay. So this, they want you to replace the line you have in there with this. All right. Why does that matter? Again, if you would please look up on the screen here. I'm going to go back and I'm going to run this again and view it in the browser. See how I changed the title? And even if I go up in here and I change this to Hello World. All right. Still works. And pretty soon, I'm going to build what's called a movies controller. And what we're going to have happen when we bring that up is it's going to show us a database of movies. We're going to create the database at first ourselves by throwing in 3 or 4 movies. Then we're going to get rid of the one we created, and I'll show you how to create it automatically. All right, we won't do that today. So again, this was what we put in there. All right, and as mentioned, it's in the handout on page 26. So we ran it. You saw where it said MVC movie. Okay, and you may or may not have noticed it says MVC movie. If I go to home, about, contact, whatever, it still has the name of my project. And by default, I can be anywhere, and if I click the title, it goes back to the home page. Don't worry, I think that has to be moved. Where is it? I had this problem before. And where this says movies, I think you want it to say movie. Okay. All right. Now, we're going to have entire chapters on some of this stuff that I've been going over with you fairly quickly. All right? And again, I can see if you'd be sitting there saying, yeah, I get it. Why the hell are we even doing this? Because I at least want you to hear the stuff we're going to be talking about next semester. Like I said, that first week of class in fall, in many ways, is a waste of a week. All right, everybody has the same look on their faces after summer break that you do after the Christmas break. Like, geez, why did I even come back? Type of a look. So if you want more on it that I'm giving you, you can take a look in there. All right. All right, so we're through about the first 27 pages. I think that's enough for today. So I'm going to pick it up right there tomorrow, all right, and go on, just so you see this. All right, I'm going to go way to the end of the project here. When we get all done, when we're literally just about done, let's see, I don't know, I'm trying to remember where they showed it. But this is the kind of thing you're going to be able to build. All right, you look right here and go like, oh, geez, that's all errors. Yeah, you're going to learn how to put errors in and have them come up automatically. All right, so when you do something you shouldn't do, it's actually very simple to do. Notice we're going to come in and build databases. All right. This is what we're going to end up doing. You look up on the screen. You're going to be able to come in here and you're going to be able to search a movie database by genre. So if you click the down arrow, it'll say romantic comedy, comedy, western, etc. So if you come in here and you put in western and you don't put in a title, but you change the genre to western and you click filter, the only movies that'll come up are Rio Bravo and Rio Bravo 2. All right? This is the kind of thing that we will create come fall. All right? You will create what's called this, I think it's the Sports Core application. Plus, we're going to take the one that we did, that sales order example, and we're going to build that too. So you're going to have two, hopefully, working ASP.NET projects by the end of the semester. All right? So it is 9:50. The last 2 hours are yours. If you're behind on anything, please try to catch up. I'm going to investigate for those 3 of you who didn't have it on there. I'm going to see if I can figure out why you didn't have it available to you.